Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rob and welcome back to episode number 56 of the Detroit Lions franchise here on Madden NFL 21. Today we have training camp as we're going to take a look at the squad post NFL draft, but preseason, just like they do in real life. They have training camp before the preseason starts. So we'll kind of talk about the team and talk about some other teams in the NFC before we get underway. So if you're excited for this one, make sure you leave a like and subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. As we try to go more in depth here in the Lions series, we're getting ready to hit the 2022 season, year 3 here in the franchise. And our Lions are coming off a 6-10 season. Not so good. Very streaky. Lost a bunch, win some, and then lost some more. Ended up 6-10 in Mike Zimmer's first year as head coach. So, what does the 2022 season look like? Well, unfortunately, we are still in a cap casualty stake. We have a lot of money tied up in dead space and a couple of veterans. So, we weren't able to make that many moves. Primarily at quarterback. There's a lot of rumors about Matthew Stafford's future this past offseason, and Stafford has one more year on his deal and is going to finish up with the Detroit Lions. Now, what his future looks like past this deal, I have no idea, but for the 2022 season, Matthew Stafford is our quarterback. Didn't have that great of a 2021, lots of interceptions, lots of mistakes made, so hopefully he can clean that up as he gets older into his season. Now, next to him in the backfield, we do have a little bit of a change. Last year, we had a pretty even split between Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift. Swift was more of that pass catcher, shotgun back, while Johnson was more of the power back. And one half of those returns, Kerryon Johnson took a deal to go to Pittsburgh in the offseason. So DeAndre Swift is still in Detroit. Now, Swift had a pretty good year last year, I think. He did a very good job out of the backfield as well. But I still have my doubts about DeAndre Swift as a number one bell cow back. He hasn't really proven that yet. So we went out this offseason and signed Jamal Williams to a 3-year, $9.15 million contract out of our rivals, Green Bay. He had 8 touchdowns a season ago, only 400 yards on the ground. He was kind of using that power back spot in Green Bay. And we're going to do it in the same position here in Detroit, as he'll be given that Kerryon Johnson role. So I expect him and Swift to split carries in the season. I want to also evaluate preseason. I will give Swift some chances to be the starting running back in preseason, so we'll see how that goes. At wide receiver, it's going to be Kenny Golladay, Tyler Vaughns, and Cordero Patterson. The top 3 stay the same. Amendola did retire, but other than that, not much change here. Vaughns had a very good rookie season. We're hoping the former second-round pick out of USC can extend it into year 2. At tight end, TJ Hawkinson is our starting tight end. He had a pretty decent year last year. Hasn't really put up bona fide numbers considering he was a high first-round pick 4 seasons ago. He does have his 5th year option this year, so I think we are going to pick it up. So that way Hawkinson is not a free agent this offseason. And that takes us to the offensive line, where there is a lot of change on this offensive line. Start off in the solidified spots. Left tackle Taylor Decker returns, and so does center Frank Ragnow, but the other 3 spots saw a lot of intrigue in the offseason. Both guard spots, we do return Kelechi Osemele after he tested free agency. On the other side, we signed Laken Tomlinson from San Francisco to be the starting left guard for a 1-year deal. And in the draft, we drafted Elijah Vera Tucker, a 3rd-round pick, to potentially be our guard of the future. Tomlinson will get the chance to start, but also want to give Vera Tucker some first-team snaps in preseason, see how he does. And then at right tackle, we also got another division rival. Rick Wagner comes over from Green Bay. He will be our right tackle this year, 1 year, $5 million. I do think he's almost better suited for left tackle, but we'll see how he does in that right tackle spot this year. So I think our offensive line is in pretty good shape. That moves us to the defensive side of things, where our defense kind of struggled last year, and it'll be interesting to see how he does this year. Starting up front, we did make some changes. We are still a 4-3 defense. However, Deshaun Hand, who got kind of lost in the shuffle, but signed a big 3-year deal. He's going to move inside to DT. He'll get primary DT work in run downs and early downs, while in the pass game, or in the 3rd downs, he will kind of shuffle off the field. Trey Flowers is still there, as well as Romeo Okwara, who came back on a 1-year deal. He's coming off back-to-back 11-sack seasons, so I'm glad to see he is returned, and I'm excited to see what he can do. At the other defensive end spots, it's kind of up for grabs. We signed Nathan Shepard post-draft to a 1-year prove-it deal, non-guaranteed, as the former Jet kind of didn't really show out last year, but We have Julian Okora, and I wasn't really sure who'd play left in with Deshaun Hand moving inside. So that's what happens up front. And the linebacker position is also different as well. We only return one starter between our three linebacker spots, and that's Jamie Collins, the NFL Defensive Player of the Year season ago. He had a phenomenal season. Hopefully he can continue it. I have I have faith that he will return. The other linebacker spots are very different. Starting middle linebacker on paper currently is Nate Landman, the 4th round pick a season ago. He impressed for me, and I think he will get a chance, as we did release July Tavai and Jarrad Davis. So Nate Landman is the number 1 on the depth chart. Behind him, though, we did sign Joel Ibuniwe, or Iggy as they call him, and I'll call him Iggy for my sake. Former Cleveland Brown signed a 2-year deal this offseason, a very cheap 2-year deal, and I like his skill set. I think he could be the nice pass coverage linebacker that we might need. At the end of the linebacker spot, right outside linebacker, also saw some change. Christian Jones is gone, and we signed Foyesade Oluokun from the Atlanta Falcons to a 3-year, $15 million contract. He's had a very good 2 seasons, 110 plus tackles in both, and he's also got an intriguing skill set. Very good coverage linebacker. He can also help in the run game, so I think he could be the sleeper pickup of free agency. Last part for us is the secondary, which has seen some change, and it might not be done with change. Our starting cornerback listed is Justin Coleman, but there's been a lot of rumors about Justin Coleman. He's been on the trade block. Detroit has been fielding offers for him, so I don't know when he will be traded, but the coaching staff has high faith in Jeff Okudah, who's coming off a phenomenal sophomore season. They think he could be that number 1 corner, and we could save some cap with Coleman and get some picks for the future. Now, we also did lose Desmond Trufant. Unfortunately, he went to Cincinnati, but in return, we picked up Daryl Worley on a 2-year, $6 million contract. Worley went back to the Panthers this past offseason after bouncing around and being drafted by the Panthers, and he put together a Pro Bowl season, 6 interceptions, and he's cashed in with a 2-year deal here in Detroit. He will start off as corner number 3, but if Coleman does get traded, he could move up to corner number 2. Behind him, it's a little bit up for grabs. We do have Amani Arourier, and we drafted Tywan Mullen in the 2nd round. They will fight in the preseason as well. Then at safety, another change, a free safety. Anthony Levine retired in the offseason, and we spent our 1st round pick on Kyle Hamilton, a very good center field safety prospect. Needs to improve his tackling a little bit, needs to improve in the run game, but Kyle Hamilton has that deep third speed where he can cover both sides of the field. He will get every chance to start at free safety. And as strong safety, we do return Tracy Walker, a very good coverage and run-stopping safety. Special teams, Matt Prater will be your kicker. Corey Borjoquez was signed to be your punter this offseason, as Jack Fox will not return. And kicking duties are still up in the air. We do have Cordero Patterson, but we did draft a late corner in Elijah Griffin, and I think he has a chance to get special team return reps as well. So that's what our Detroit Lions look like this season, and hopefully you're excited for them. But we're going to move on to our division rivals. We want to see what they did as well in the offseason, starting with the Green Bay Packers. The Packers, they won the division a season ago. They went 11-5. They finished 1st in the division, and they were 1st in the NFC for most of last year, but kind of fell off down the stretch. And they ended up losing in the wild card round to the San Francisco 49ers 30-28. So obviously they were the 1st in the division a year ago, so they are still the team to beat. They still have Aaron Rodgers. They have a very good running back trio in Philip Lindsay, Travis Etienne, and A.J. Dillon, and all 3 of them get reps. But there are a lot of question marks on this team. Number 1, they lost Devontae Adams in free agency. He signed a deal with the New York Giants. So it's going to be up to Devin Funchess to be the number 1 receiver, and he's had a great past 2 seasons in Green Bay. 1,000+ yards in both seasons and 11 touchdowns, but I have question marks to see if Funchess can be that number 1 receiver. Also on offense, that right side of their O-line is very weak. They still have Bakhtiari at left tackle, but the whole right side is spotty. They did spend a 1st round pick on Nicholas Petit-Frere, who will get reps at starting right tackle for him, but I don't know if they can hold up. Defensively, there's still some question marks on that side. They have a weak defensive line outside of Kenny Clark, but they do have playmakers at all levels. Kenny Clark, Zadarius Smith, Jair Alexander. They do have X factors at every level, and they do have good safety play. Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos are a very good 1-2 tandem to play against. I think the Packers could win the division. Not quite sure. It won't be easy, but they are still my pick to win the NFC North this season. Now we have to move on to not only the most intriguing team in the division, but arguably the most intriguing team in the NFL. That is the Chicago Bears, who are coming off an NFC worst 4-12 season. They fired Matt Nagy, and they hired Sean McVay. So a very big change in Chicago, but it doesn't end there. They made plenty of moves this offseason, primarily trading for quarterback Trey Lance, the third-round pick a season ago, who was backing up MVP Ryan Tannehill. And the Bears, they were tired of Mitchell Trubisky. He left a couple seasons ago, and then Nick Foles started last year. He is still on roster, but he is currently the backup. They're going all in on a very young core, and I kind of like it. Trey Lance is your quarterback this season, and then next to him is Kenneth Gainwell, a second-round pick a season ago, who played very well in his role. And the Chicago Bears have a lot of faith in him. They're willing to trade David Montgomery to Tennessee in that Trey Lance package. So it'll be a very young backfield. However, Trey Lance does have Allen Robinson on the outside. So a very good player at each skill position. Well, not really good, we don't know yet, but very high potential at every skill position. Makes this Chicago offense very intriguing. And Trey Lance, he has a pretty solid offensive line to stay behind. They're not great, but they are very serviceable. Trey Lance should get time in the pockets. I am very interested to see what he does this year. We do see him twice a year, so I do have those Chicago games marked on the calendar. On defense, it gets even better. They have an elite front seven, one I'm not excited to play against. Akeem Hicks, Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, the second-year man, Christian Barmore, their first-round pick a season ago, another young stud who has a very bright future ahead of him. In fact, Chicago was willing to depart with Eddie Goldman in the offseason. He was traded to Houston for a third-round pick. So Christian Barmore will get chances up the middle. That's a very scary front seven. However, their secondary is a little weak. Hopefully their front seven can make up for it, but outside of the speedy Eddie Jackson at free safety, I don't know if they really have anybody. They do have Kyle Fuller, but they might need some more in that secondary. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with the Bears. I do think they have a chance to make a wild card spot this season. So their games will not be easy to win. And then lastly, in our division, we have the Minnesota Vikings, who are coming off a 9-7 season, had one of the best second halves in all of football, were red hot, and were able to sneak into the playoffs in Mike Tomlin's first year in Minnesota. Now, the talk wasn't that they made the postseason a year ago. All of the talk has been they're trading up in the draft to pick number 3 to select quarterback Sam Howell out of North Carolina. Vikings have invested a lot into this draft pick, and it was kind of a shocker. They already do have Kirk Cousins on roster for next season, so Sam Howell doesn't have to start right away. However, I do think we'll see Sam Howell at some point in this next season. Now, if Kirk Cousins struggles early on, we might be seeing Sam Howell early on, but both the Bears and the Vikings have young quarterbacks that they plan to build around, so this division is going to be a lot of fun to play up against for years to come. On offense, Sam Howell or Kirk Cousins, they have plenty of help at the skill positions. They have talent overloaded. We'll start in the backfield. Dalvin Cook, one of the best backs in football. At wide receiver, they have a talented trio. Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, last year's first-round pick Jamar Chase. They are loaded. It's hard to cover them. You saw in our Vikings games last season, they trounced us in the first meeting, and we had to come from behind in the second meeting to beat them. So it is not going to be easy against that Vikings offense. The defense, they're still talented up front as well. They have Danielle Hunter, Michael Pierce, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks. However, they are weak in the secondary. It was weak a season ago, and it only got weaker. Remember, Harrison Smith, the hitman, one of the best strong safeties, I think the best strong safety in all of football, he left in the offseason. He is no longer in Minnesota. We tried to sign Harrison Smith, but instead he went to San Francisco. More about that in a little bit. So they're going to be relying on Talona Hufanga, an unproven second-year, fifth-round pick at USC. He will try to fill that strong safety spot, but it is a very weak secondary. They have some pieces, but like last year, whenever we play Minnesota, or if any team plays Minnesota, they're going to try to pick on that secondary. So that alone might hold Minnesota back this season. Now that we've covered all of the NFC North, let's step out to the rest of the NFC, and we have to start the defending NFC champion Washington football team, who were a quarter away, almost a drive away, of winning their first Super Bowl in 30 years. Now, Washington, they didn't make it on a cakewalk. They actually finished 9-7 a season ago and were the 6th seed. But Ron Rivera, who's a former 2-time Coach of the Year in his second season, pulled off the magic and got Washington to the Super Bowl. They were actually one game away from winning it all. Now, the reason why they got there, one offense. Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, the best running back duo in football. Last year, they combined for 2,000 plus all-purpose yards and 16 touchdowns. You got to think Washington is going to rely on that again this year. Now, quarterback, they have fourth-year man Dwayne Haskins, who hasn't been phenomenal in his 4 years, but he's done exactly what he needs to do. He's been very serviceable. He's limited the mistakes. He only threw 6 interceptions a season ago, and he threw 27 touchdowns. So whenever he's called upon and he needs to help, he will get the job done. Now, in my opinion, I think you could use another playmaker on offense. They tried to add Kendrick Bourne a season ago. He was okay, but it wasn't necessarily the best number 2 behind Terry McLaurin. They did draft Tutu Atwell a couple of drafts ago, who they have some high hopes in, but I think Dwayne Haskins could use another playmaker on the outside. They haven't really had a tight end since Jordan Reed left. Now, the offensive line, it's also pretty good. It's anchored by Brandon Scherf, but there are a couple of question marks on that side as well. So I have some question marks to see if Washington can repeat what they did on offense a year ago. On defense, it's a completely different story. It's part of the reason why they reached the Super Bowl. They had the same scary front four. Chase Young's already one of the best pass rushers in football. Matthew Ioannidis, he's also a problem up the middle. And then on both sides, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Ryan Kerrigan. There's a surplus of talent here, almost enough where they could trade a piece and try to get some talent elsewhere. Now, in the linebacker group, Donta Hightower still anchors that middle. He came over last offseason from New England. He was a very nice captain for Washington. Somebody Ron Rivera, a defensive specialist, could rely on. Now, in the secondary, they have a great safety duo, in my opinion, Kendall Fuller and Landon Collins. Collins will land the boom, and Kendall, a former corner, can cover some ground as well. Speaking of corners, they have second-year man Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, the number 3 pick a season ago, who also had an interception in the Super Bowl. So looking for a sophomore breakout campaign from him. I think Washington could get it done in the NFC, but in my opinion, they aren't the favorite. The favorite for me is, believe it or not, the Dallas Cowboys. We them boys finished 11-5 a season ago. They actually won the NFC East, but they did lose in the wild card round to Washington, so the rivals did get the last laugh. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the most talented teams in the NFC. I mean, they should really be challenging for Super Bowl spots every single season, but I mean, they do still have Mike McCarthy as their coach. I still have, my doubts about him. Yes, he did win a Super Bowl, but he only won one with Aaron Rodgers. Don't know what he's going to get out of Dallas, but they still have offensive firepower. Dak Prescott, he's still under center. 3,300 yards a season ago, 35 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And then they have arguably the best back in NFL, Ezekiel Elliott. What more can you say? 1,800 yards a season ago, 16 touchdowns. In my opinion, I think he should have won MVP. He had a very strong case, but obviously he didn't. And then on the outside, Amari Cooper. Only played in 9 games last year. He only had 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. So very odd numbers for Cooper a season ago. Yes, he was hurt, but I expect bigger numbers from Cooper. On the other side, the big 88, CeeDee Lamb, 594 yards, 7 touchdowns. It's very odd that their top 2 targets, 2 of the brightest young receivers, didn't get a whole lot of yards. I don't know if that's just bad scheming. I don't know. But Dak Prescott did have 33, so I don't really know where his targets were going to, but it wasn't going to Cooper and Lamb. Tight end Dallas Goedert did have 8 touchdowns, so he was involved a little bit. But hopefully they can kind of start to click on offense. So on defense, they still have DeMarcus Lawrence. He had 11 tackles for loss a season ago, 8 sacks, very disruptive in the run game. Jalen Smith is still a solid linebacker. They do have it kind of rough in the secondary as, when you tie all that money up on offense, your defense is going to suffer. Teams can pass on Dallas, which is kind of their weakness. Outside of Chidobe Awuzie, they really don't have anybody. Both safety spots are weak, trying to rely on young second-year players, aging veterans. Don't know if they're going to be able to get it done in the NFC as a general, but I do think they have enough talent to win the NFC East. Next up is the NFC West, starting off with the best team in the NFC a season ago, the Seattle Seahawks. They finished 11-5, had the 1 seed, but didn't really make it very far in the postseason, as in their first game, they were defeated in the divisional round by their division rivals, San Francisco 49ers. After they had a fourth quarter lead, they blew it late, and Seattle missed out on another chance at a Super Bowl. Now, this is a very interesting team. I don't know if they've already peaked or not. You got to think about who their coach is. It is Bill O'Brien. I don't really have a lot of faith in the Seattle team, honestly. Yes, they still have plenty of talent, but in my opinion, they're not the favorite in the NFC West. I don't even know if they get the 2 spot. Los Angeles looks pretty scary. Arizona is still talented on offense. That's not to say Seattle doesn't have their talent. I mean, Russell Wilson is still underneath center, 4,000 yards a season ago, 36 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Did hear a little bit of rumors in the offseason, however, about his future, so that'll be interesting to watch. They still have Chris Carson. They still have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. They drafted Justin Ross in the 4th round, who I think is a great value pick for them. But their offensive line is scary bad. They have Ben Jones as center, who's really the only proven one. But other than that, I think Russell Wilson's going to have a hard time staying in the pocket. He's going to be running for his life too much for my liking. I don't know if he'll be able, if he puts up 4,000 yards again behind this line, that would be pretty impressive. On defense, Seattle's always been known for their defense, and it's still their strong suit, in my opinion. They have Yannick Ngakoue, who they traded for a couple of seasons ago. He's still a dominant man on the line. Bud Dupree, who was signed a season ago from Pittsburgh, he had a pretty solid season in his own right. Bobby Wagner is still there, and they do have a solid secondary. It's not quite Legion of Boom secondary, but between Shaquille Griffin, Trey Flowers, Quandre Diggs, and of course Jamal Adams, as a solid secondary, one I don't really want to pass against. Seattle did trounce us in the regular season a season ago, so I can't really say that they're bad. We don't really have anywhere to speak. But in my opinion, they're not the favorites to win the NFC West. That's got to go to the San Francisco 49ers. They finished 9-7 a season ago and squeaked in with a 7 seed. But they made a run. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship, where they lost 21-18 to Washington. They actually had a lead in the 4th quarter, and I thought San Francisco might do it. I thought we'd get a rematch from the Super Bowl a few seasons ago, but unfortunately we weren't able to. But we have a chance this season because, in my opinion, the San Francisco 49ers, they're my pick to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. They are talented at all levels. On offense, you still got to start with Jimmy Garoppolo. He isn't the most talented quarterback, but like Dwayne Haskins in Washington, he knows his role. He doesn't have to go out there and pass for 4,000 yards a season, 35 touchdowns. He's a nice, solid game manager, and he gets the job done for Harbaugh out there. Now, they do have George Kittle, a very good safety blanket, the best tight end in football. And they have Deebo Samuel on the outside, who's starting to blossom his way into a solid wide receiver. In this past season, they spent their 1st-round pick on John Emery Jr., the running back out of LSU. Arguably the best value pick. Now, running backs aren't usually the best selection to make, but, John Emery, when you have the talent that San Francisco has, you can kind of spend it on a running back. Now, on defense, though, this is where it really gets scary. They have the best defense in the league, in my opinion, and they only got stronger in the offseason. Remember I talked about Harrison Smith? Yeah, he's out there in San Francisco now. Signed a 2-year, $20 million contract to head out there. He actually spurned us for less money to try to win a ring. Can't really blame him. Still a little salty about that, however. But listen to this defensive talent. Eric Armstead, D Ford, Nick Bosa, Sheldon Rankins, Javon Kinlaw, Quan Alexander, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Israel Mukwamu, Jimmy Ward, Harrison Smith. They have playmakers at all levels. I mean, I don't even know where the weakness is. They're so surplus that a talented player like D Ford, he's actually on the trade block. So I don't know how San Francisco could get any better on defense. One player you realize I didn't list, though, was Richard Sherman. He did retire in the offseason, so that kind of hurts San Francisco a little bit. Mukwamu, I think, is a great corner. I think he will be a number 1 corner. If there was a weakness, I just don't know if he's number 1 ready yet. But that's kind of nitpicking at this point. I don't know why Sherman retired. He has his best chance at a ring here, but I get it. So San Francisco, they are my pick to win it all. Or not win it all, but to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. So we've covered all the divisions so far. Lastly, that leaves the NFC South, and there's a reason why I left the NFC South for last. In my opinion, there's no real team that scares me here. Atlanta Falcons, they did win the NFC South, and while I do think they have a chance again, I had to highlight the New Orleans Saints here. They're coming off an 8-8 season. They won the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago, but it is officially the end of an era in New Orleans. After that Super Bowl win, Drew Brees did retire, and I mean, the Saints, they tried to hold on, try to go for a repeat. Sean Payton stuck around. They signed Phillip Rivers to a 1-year deal. That didn't work out at all. They missed the postseason. Rivers had a down year, so Sean Payton is officially retired. In New Orleans, they're ready to start over. They have a new coach, but he's a familiar face in New Orleans. Greg Williams, the former Jets coordinator, is back in New Orleans, and if you remember his last time in New Orleans, he was a key part of that Bounty Gate scandal. So Greg Williams has some doubters to prove in New Orleans, but at least he's a familiar face. Now on offense, their quarterback is very interesting. Their quarterback is Daniel Jones. He is their starter going into the season. I thought they would pick quarterback in the first round. Keaton Slavis was still on the board when they got there, but instead they didn't go with Slavis. They went with a defensive player, which, I mean, you got to get talent, but I don't know if Daniel Jones is the quarterback who's going to lead you. Now, they did technically draft a quarterback later in the rounds with Clifford from Penn State, but he's obviously not going to start. So Daniel Jones, he gets a second chance here in New Orleans. Now, he has Michael Thomas to throw to, which is always good, but other than that, there's not much talent. They have a young Keontae Ingram at running back who had a pretty good season a year ago, but it's going to be asked for a lot in his second year. Now, he does have the best offensive line of football, bookended by 2 great tackles in Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk. So Daniel should have plenty of time in the pocket, more than he had in New York. But it'll be interesting to see how Daniel Jones does this season. On defense, they are led by NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year season ago, middle linebacker Deshaun Watson. He had a phenomenal year, so that's a nice building block for the Saints to build around. They still have Cam Jordan, they still have Marshawn Lattimore, and they did add Jesse Bates in free agency from Cincinnati. Signed a 5-year, $33 million contract. So I don't think the Saints will make the postseason this year, honestly, but I wanted to highlight them just because they did win the Super Bowl a couple seasons ago, and it'll be interesting to see how they do with the end of an era and with Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes at quarterback. So that's going to do it here for the NFC preview. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will have an AFC one coming out, but trying to get more realism, trying to get you guys in depth with the series. So I appreciate those who stuck around to the end. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments section if you enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe down below. We're very close to 300 subscribers. I like to hit that by the end of March. I know you guys can do it. But this is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.